Hi, welcome back to my channel. For those who don't know me, my name is Katharine, and in today's Vlogmas video, I'm going to be answering questions to the 12 Days of Christmas book tag. So essentially, as this title of this book tag already assumes, I'm going to be answering 12 book-related questions to the 12 Days of Christmas. The 12 Days of Christmas being the very well-known and beloved Christmas song. So essentially, I got this specific set of questions for this book tag from a blog that I searched called ZZ with Books. I'm going to tag the book tag down below so that you can reference it. And I wasn't tagged by anyone in particular to do this book tag. I just looked it up online and thought it sounded fun to do, so that's what I'm doing. Feel free, if you're watching this, consider yourself tagged for this video as well and have at it. You can answer it however you like, maybe down in the comments, maybe with your own YouTube video, maybe in a blog post, and share it with me because I'd love to know your answers as well. But anyway, let's get into this book tag, the 12 Days of Christmas book tag. So the first question, it goes like this. On the first day of Christmas, my true love sent to me a partridge in a pear tree. The partridge stood alone in the pear tree. What is your favorite standalone? And I have to say, one of my favorite books of all time, like whenever someone asks me like what my favorite book of all time is, this is always my answer. It's Redeeming Love by Francine Rivers. It's a standalone, and that's why I'm answering this question with this book. It is essentially a loose retelling of the book of Hosea in the Bible. It takes place in the 1850s or 60s. It's like the gold rush era in California. So this young girl at like 8 years old gets sold into prostitution as a child, and she grows up in this lifestyle, and it's, you know, of course, very traumatic. So she turns 18 and she ends up marrying this guy named Michael Hosea, and he's a man of God. And because she didn't really grow up with like Jesus being mentioned or God in general, he basically teaches her like the love of God. And though she may try to reject Michael Hosea's love or try to run away, Michael Hosea, the guy that Angel marries, this main female character, no matter how many times she tries to run away, he always tries to come after her and try to bring her back. And not like a demeaning, you know, toxic way. He just wants to make sure that she's safe and that he knows that she's loved. And like, it's just a beautiful story and like portrayal of like how God loves us and is always chasing after us, like no matter how many times we sin or try to run away from him, like God loves us and God cares for us. And I just love Redeeming Love by Francine Rivers so much. If you haven't read it already, especially if you're a Christian, Francine Rivers is like a great Christian fiction author in general. So any book that you pick up by her, like it's gonna be amazing. But like specifically, I recommend Redeeming Love. Like if you're gonna read any one of her books for the first time, specifically pick up Redeeming Love by her. It's amazing, and that's probably my favorite standalone book, and that definitely fit the prompt for this question. The second question is, on the second day of Christmas, my true love sent to me 2 turtle doves. Love is in the air. Who is your true pairing? So I'm assuming this is asking like who your favorite book couple is. And I'm trying not to repeat books in this video, so I'm not going to say Michael Hosea and Angel from Redeeming Love, although I do love them. I'm going to mention another Francine Rivers book called The Masterpiece. And essentially it's a Christian contemporary book, and it follows this man who's a famous artist, and he actually is like an undercover graffiti artist as well. And of course, doing graffiti is illegal, so he has to kind of keep it under wraps as well. And then he hires an assistant, like an administrative assistant named Grace, and Grace has had a rough time as well. She is a single mom, and basically it's all about like Grace and helping Roman, who's like the famous artist, an undercover graffiti artist, and like it's about basically like her teaching Roman about Jesus, because Grace is a Christian, and Roman, like, because he kind of grew up in a hard lifestyle, he like grew up in the foster care system, I believe, and if I'm remembering correctly, and he also had a mom who was like a drug addict, and like also I think his dad was like not really in the picture. So it's just like a beautiful depiction of like a true contemporary love story. I'm not a big fan of like contemporary books in general. I'm more of like a historical fiction book person. But this is one book that I truly love, and it's like such a great depiction of like, there was like never any moment that I thought that they were being lustful, or like there was like no spice in this book. Obviously it's a Christian contemporary novel, so I hope there's no spice in a Christian fiction book, but like essentially it's just a beautiful picture of like there was no like bad intentions in the first place in Grace becoming Roman's administrative assistant. And it takes place in California, much like Redeeming Love by Francine Rivers. The masterpiece also takes place in California, but it's like in Topanga Canyon, which if you haven't visited Topanga Canyon, I have. It's such a beautiful, like there's this, it's a beautiful like canyon. It's a canyon. You can drive through it. It's beautiful. If you ever are out in like the Malibu, LA area, definitely take a drive through Topanga Canyon. There's all these houses like along this highway through this canyon, and they're like on the sides of these like mountains, and like I don't even know if they're mountains, but it's these hills and valleys, and like it's a canyon, okay? So I can just like picture where Roman lived in this book, and it was just such a beautiful book of like he wasn't a Christian, and like how Grace really showed him like the love of Christ, even though she had been in a really tough situation as well. And basically by the end of the book, like as you can imagine, they get together, and like with any romance, you know that the couple's gonna get together, okay? That's not a spoiler. But basically the whole book is just about her teaching him about the love of Christ, and like he comes to know Jesus through her, and like it's just such a beautiful love story. And that's why I'm choosing this as like my favorite book couple, because like it's just so realistic, and it also just shows like the renewing power of Christ in someone's life. Like they honestly didn't like get together like truly until like the very, very end of the book, but like the whole entire story was like Roman really struggling with the things that he's been through, and like grappling with like the hard stuff that his childhood brought. So like it just is a great book for those who are like, especially people who are new Christians, or are like questioning Christianity in general, or who Jesus is. It's a great book to read if like you're also having questions, or you've had questions. Like, I mean, even as someone who's been a Christian for years, like it definitely inspired me. And I just truly love them as a couple, because it was just so wholesome and such a great depiction of like what Jesus can do in your life. And like also how Jesus can be the center of your relationship as well. And then the third question: on the third day of Christmas, my true love sent to me 3 French hens. So in the spirit of threes, what is your best trilogy you've read? So that's funny, because I typically don't read a lot of series. I am currently reading through the Harry Potter series right now, which I'll get to in another question later on in this video. But I am not a big series person in general, so it was kind of hard for me to answer this question. And I'm also really picky when it comes to series. So like if I read a first book in a series and I don't like the first book, like if it's not a 4-star and above, then I'm not gonna read the rest of the series. So quite honestly, I haven't read a lot of trilogies and series in general, not just trilogies. But the one trilogy that I could think of on the top of my head that I've actually finished and enjoyed was the Summer I Turned Pretty trilogy. Essentially, if I can speak English today, it's about this girl named Bella, and it follows her in the entirety of the trilogy. And she summers in this made-up town in Massachusetts for the summers, and she essentially stays with this family friend and her 2 sons, and it's just about this one summer where she like gets her glasses and braces off, and she essentially is pretty, you know, pretty. And it's about the summer she turned pretty. And the first book is about that first summer that she turned pretty, and all the books after that are like further summers, I believe. And it was just a cute like young adult romance book, and she has a romance with the 2 brothers that also are at this summer house. And basically this summer house is like right on the beach, apparently. Like, it's called Cousins Beach, which is like just a made-up beach in Massachusetts. And I personally loved this trilogy on a more personal note because I am from Massachusetts and I am from a small coastal town. So we have a lot of beaches here. So it kind of just reminded me of like my hometown, and like if like in some different universe, like this could have been my life, you know? But like honestly, I didn't have my first boyfriend until like I was in my 20s. So like it really wouldn't have been an alternate universe. But like it could have been, I don't know. I just like to think that it could have been my life, but like that's just besides the point. But it was just a very young, cute, fun read, and like I read it during the summer a few years ago, and I just remember really enjoying it. And it's very atmospheric. If you're looking for something that's like light and fluffy and like a summer read that you can easily get through, I believe all 3 books are under under 300 pages or around 300 pages, so they're fairly short and easy to get through. And it's young adult, so it's a fast read for the most part. So I definitely recommend the Summer I Turned Pretty series, and that's what I answered for that question. Okay. On the 4th day of Christmas, my true love sent to me 4 calling birds. Since series usually consist of 4 or more books, what is your favorite series? This is the question that I was talking about regarding Harry Potter. So I'm currently reading actually the last and final book in the Harry Potter series. It's the 7th book. It's the Deathly Hallows one. And because I'm like essentially almost done with the series, I can practically count it as like a series that I finished. Like, I'm almost done, okay? So I just want to mention that series because I have read that series. It's over 4 books, obviously. It's 7 books. I'm on the 7th book right now. And it's such a great read. Like, it's very iconic. Like, it's a book series and a movie series that like most everyone knows about, and it's very widely loved, and I have come to appreciate it. This is actually my first time reading the series all the way through because I watched the movies growing up but actually never read the books. So I wanted to go back and read the books because, first of all, the movies were always so confusing to me because they were trying to fit so much information into the books that it felt really rushed, and also they left a lot of stuff out too, which is what I'm realizing like reading the books and then rewatching the movies now. So I wanted to read the books so that I wasn't so confused, and it's been helping me a lot reading the books because it has actually furthered my understanding of the Harry Potter series in general. Okay, the 5th question. On the 5th day of Christmas, my true love sent to me 5 golden rings. 1 ring to rule them all. Who is your favorite villain / antagonist? That's a good one. I'd have to think about that. So I'm gonna have to say, from the Twilight series, my favorite villain / antagonist, I don't know if you would consider him a villain or antagonist, but because I'm Team Jacob, I'm gonna count this towards being the villain or antagonist, and that's gonna be Edward Cullen. I am not the biggest Edward Cullen fan because I am Team Jacob, so that's why I'm like considering him a villain or antagonist. And also he's a vampire, so vampires tend to be portrayed as evil in a lot of books, even though in the Twilight series, like, he is having a romance with Bella. But I'm gonna count him as a villain or antagonist because I find this question to be really tricky to answer because, like, I just tend not to like villains or antagonists in books, and I tend not to read a lot of books, aka fantasy books, that have a lot of villains in it. So even if I do read a book that has a villain in it, I like literally don't like them, and it's clear why I wouldn't like them because they're a villain or antagonist, and like, I'm not big on liking the bad guy. I'm always like rooting for the light and the good. So I'm gonna say Edward Cullen for the villain or antagonist that I like, just because even though he's like not a true villain or antagonist, like I mentioned before, vampires tend to portray evil, and I am Team Jacob, so I would rather have Bella with Jacob, and I view Edward Cullen as like the bad guy or the villain, and that Bella shouldn't be with him. Even though I did enjoy the Twilight series, like, I just don't like Edward Cullen for Bella. I think she should be with Jacob. Number 6, on the 6th day of Christmas, my true love sent to me 6 geese a-laying. Creation is a beautiful thing. What is your favorite world/world building book? And that means like a fantasy book. I'm not like a huge fantasy reader. Like, I of course am reading Harry Potter, but that's like the very most basic type of fantasy. But I would probably have to say maybe the Selection series by Kiera Cass. Even though it's like not a true fantasy series, I don't even think it's considered fantasy. It's considered dystopian. It's a young adult dystopian series. I do really like the concept or the world building of that series, just because it's essentially like a teenage version and royalty version of The Bachelor. Essentially, this prince named Maxon needs to find the next queen and his new wife, and he basically holds a bachelor type like competition so that he can find himself a wife and a next queen for this kingdom of Ilia, which is like basically the new United States. I really enjoyed that series. It's like a 4-star series for me, just for the pure fact that it was YA, and it was, or young adult I should say, and it just came off very immature at times, but I did enjoy my time while reading it. Okay, number 7, on the 7th day of Christmas, my true love sent to me 7 swans a-swimming. Who needs 7 swans when all it takes is one good animal sidekick to make a hero rock? Who's your favorite animal sidekick? And I don't think he's considered a sidekick because like the whole book is named after him, but I would have to say Despero from The Tale of Despero. He's a mouse, and I just think that he's adorable. It was actually the first book I actually fell in love with in the 4th grade. My teacher read this book to our class, and then I had my mom immediately buy it for me, and I read it like 10 times through in like a row because I just loved it so much. He's not a sidekick, but he is like my favorite like animal character like in any book of all time. On the 8th day of Christmas, my true love sent to me 8 maids a milking. Milk is so 18th century. Which book or series takes beverages/food to a whole new level? This was actually hard for me to answer because I was like having a hard time thinking of like what book I've read that like describes food, but I would have to say The Help by Katharine Stockett. I know there's one scene, if you know what I'm talking about, you know. If you know, you know. Of like one of the characters making a pie for her employer. And I'm not talking about that specific pie. If you know what I'm talking about, like that pie is disgusting and should never be eaten. But there are other scenes in that book of like this specific person making like baked goods, and whenever she's making these baked goods, it just sounds delicious, and I do want to eat one of her meals or baked goods. And not that specific pie that she gave to one of her employers, but like all of her other stuff sounds great. Okay, number 9. On the 9th day of Christmas, my true love sent to me 9 ladies dancing. Dancing is just one skill of a lady. Who is your favorite kick-ass female lead? I apologize for the language. I was just reading that and didn't realize that's what was being said, but basically, who is a strong female lead in a book that I love? And I would probably have to say, I'm just looking at my bookshelves right now to see who I would choose. Oh, I would have to say Where the Lost Wander by Amy Harmon. The female main lead in that is named Naomi, and she is just one of those characters that like says what she thinks what she says. Like, she's just very like blatantly honest. Like, she doesn't take any bull crap. Like, she's a very strong-willed, very stubborn too, even to a fault, but like she is very headstrong, and that's why what I admire about her is because a lot of the values that she holds are very Christian in their essence, and she does identify as Christian, I believe, in the book. I don't think Where the Lost Wander by Amy Harmon is considered a Christian fiction book, or I don't even think Amy Harmon identifies as a Christian fiction author, but I have heard that Amy Harmon and her faith inspire her writing, and she is a Christian, so there's a lot of mention of like prayer and Jesus and God and church and hymns and stuff like that in her books. So Naomi like definitely holds a lot of those Christian values in her stubbornness and her strong-willedness and her determination, if that makes sense. So I do definitely love Naomi for that, and I really admire her character. On the 10th day of Christmas, my true love sent to me 10 lords a-leaping. Leaping lords, how about who is your favorite leading lad? So for this 10th question, I do have to choose a male main character that I like, and on the same note of Where the Lost Wander by Amy Harmon, I do love John Lowry. John Lowry and Naomi, from my last question, have a romance, and he struggles a lot with his identity. He, in this book, is considered, or not just considered, he is half Native American and half white. And I just love how he, throughout the book, has a lot of character development, and he obviously has to work on a lot of things because he never quite felt like he fit with the whites or with Native Americans. Like, he felt like he had one foot in and one foot out in both communities, and I just love how he overcame that and like truly found himself by the end of the book. Number 11. On the 11th day of Christmas, my true love sent to me 11 pipers piping. Where would we be without music? What is your favorite book or bookish thing that deals with music? It can be about music, references of music a lot in the book, etc. And I probably would have to say A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, just because of the fact that like in A Christmas Carol, it has literally the word carol in the title of the book. So I'm gonna choose that, even though like the book itself doesn't really deal with a lot of music. It does have like one scene of like this child like knocking or like at least singing outside of the door of the Scrooge and Marley office, and he's like singing A Christmas Carol, but like of course Scrooge like shoos him away. There's like one song that's the one song that I can remember from that book, but of course like I'm just going along the lines of like A Christmas Carol has carol in the title, and carol is also another word for song. It's just like a Christmas song. So I do really like A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. It's just a Christmas classic, and it's something that I'm gonna definitely read in years to come, and it's just such a festive read. And then the last and final question, number 12. On the 12th day of Christmas, my true love sent to me 12 drummers drumming. Drum roll, please. what is your favorite read of the year? And that would have to be, again, Where the Lost Wander by Amy Harmon. I know I said I try not to repeat books in this, but I have done that quite a few times here in this video, but that's because like a lot of these questions had similarities in the same book, or books I should say. And Where the Lost Wander I read this year in October, and it was a 6-star read. Like, I rate my books on like a 5-star scale, but like when I rate a book 6 stars, it's like a book that I will take no criticism from. It is perfect in my eyes, and it's just like above and beyond like what I enjoyed during my time reading the book. But yeah, Where the Lost Wander was my favorite book of the year in 2024, and I'll probably be mentioning that in my 2024 year in review, or like books I've read this year video. I'm going to do a video like that, and I'm sure I'm going to mention that book, it being like my 6-star read of the year. And I loved that book. It was like such a beautiful story, and I'm going to definitely be reading more of Amy Harmon's books. It essentially is about this girl named Naomi and her family who trek from Missouri out to California on the Oregon Trail. And John Lowry, who I was describing earlier in this video, who's like half Native American, half white, and his uncle, who's white, kind of help lead Naomi's family and a bunch of other families out on the Oregon Trail out to California. And it's just essentially about like this journey out to California and all like the hardships that come with it. And also it's about Naomi and John's romance, and it was just so beautiful and wholesome, and I just will take no criticism on the book. It was perfect in my eyes. I just loved that book. It was definitely one of my favorites of the year, if not my favorite. But yeah, that is my 12 days of Christmas book tag video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed watching it. I enjoyed making it. Do all the things that you know how to do. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!